Good evening, everybody. How are you today? So, last period we finished or we began with the first lesson in Unit 7, and it's titled under the title What are Physical Properties of Matter? Then we began with physical property, and we said physical property is a characteristic of matter. We can observe it or measure it directly. So, any characteristic of matter, we can observe it by using senses like color, size, odor, texture, and shape. So all of these things we can observe them directly by using our five senses. Or we can measure it directly like mass, like volume, like density, like temperature, etc. So any property of matter we can observe it or measure it directly, we call it physical property. Then we listed some physical properties like these properties. Our lesson today about mass, volume, and density. What is mass and what is volume? But before mass and volume, let's remember matter. So, we said matter is what? Last lesson we said what? Matter is anything that takes up space, okay? Anything that takes up space and has mass. So anything, any object that takes up space here means volume and has mass. So anything that has mass and volume, we call it matter. Anything that has mass and volume, we call it what? Matter. What is mass and what is volume? Mass means mass. The mass of object is 2 kilogram. The mass of this object is 10 gram, like this. So the amount of matter in an object, we call it mass. So what is mass? The amount of matter. The amount of matter in an object. So again, mass is the amount of matter in an object. How we can measure mass? Easy, and we know this. We measure mass by using Pound balance or balance. We measure the mass of an object. So by using pound balance or balance, we use or we can measure the mass of an object. The unit of mass is gram for small things and kilogram. So we use grams and kilograms as units of mass. This is universal units. Other units like ton, like pounds, that's not included in your book. Okay, so what is mass? The amount of matter in an object, and we use pound balance to measure the mass of an object. Gram and kilogram are units of mass. Okay, so easy till now. Now volume. So let's begin with volume here. Volume. What is volume? When we define matter, we said what? Anything that takes up space and has mass. And we said takes up space means volume. So to find the volume of anything here, for example, okay, to find the volume of this barrel, okay, so the amount of space inside it gives the volume of this object. So what is volume? The amount of space. The amount of space an object takes up. So the amount of matter means mass, and the amount of space, we call it volume. the amount of space, volume, the amount of matter, mass. Okay? How to find or to measure the volume of objects? Here we have more than one point. If we have liquids like water, like juices, like anything else, here by using measuring cup, easy. So to put the liquid inside a measuring cup, then you'll see numbers here. For example, 400 milliliter. A liter with L, and milliliter with ml are units of volume. Okay? So what is volume? The amount of space an object takes up. This is the first point. How we can measure the volume of liquids? By using measuring cup or graduated cylinder. Okay, we use measuring cup to measure the volume of liquids. The units of liquids, liters and milliliters. Okay, now how to find or to measure the volume of solids? Here is the most important point. With solids, to find the volume of solids, okay, we have two cases. Some solids have regular shape and others irregular shapes. So, to find the volume of solid, you have to know this shape is regular or irregular. If the regular shape, like what? Like prisms, like cubes, okay, like spheres, okay, we have in your book only about a cube. If we have a cubic shape, so to find the volume of solids, and this solid has regular shape like cube, by using mathematical formulas to find the volume of a cube. This is the length, for example 4, and the width 5, sorry, and the width 4, and the height is 2. So the volume equals length multiplied by width multiplied by height. So it equals L is 5, length 5, times the width 4, times the height is 2. So 20 times 2 equals 40. If the unit here is centimeter, it will be cubic centimeter. So tell here. So the volume of solids. To find the volume of solids, if we have regular shape like cubic shape, to find the volume by using mathematical formulas. Length multiplied width multiplied height. Okay? Now, if we have irregular shape, so if you have a stone, for example, and this stone like this shape is an irregular shape. So how to find the volume of this shape? To find the volume of this shape, I'll use measuring cup. How? By using measuring cup? Then this is the first step. Then put in this measuring cup water, for example, till 300, for example, milliliter. Okay? Then put the stone inside it. What will happen? If we put the stone inside it, the level of water will raise. So the stone will be inside it. Okay? So before we said 300 milliliter we put. Now to, for example, 500 milliliter. Okay? So water raises from 300 till 500. So the volume of this stone equals what? 500. This is the final level minus initial level 300. So it equals 200 milliliter. Okay? Again. So we said volume is the amount of space an object takes up. Okay? and we use liter and milliliter as units of the volume. To find the volume of liquids, we use measuring cup. So by using measuring cup, we can find the volume of liquids. To find the volume of solids, we have two cases here, regular and irregular shape. If we have regular shape, like cubes, by mathematical formulas, okay? By mathematical formulas, length multiplied width multiplied height. To find the volume of an irregular shape, here you have to use measuring cup, then put inside it water. The difference between two levels will give you the volume of this shape, okay? Then volume, mass, and density. What is density? Density means the mass of an object over volume or in a certain volume. So, the mass over volume or the ratio between mass and volume of an object. So density equals mass divided by volume, or like this, D equals M over V. Density equals mass divided by volume. Example, if the mass of an object equals 50 gram and the volume of this object equals 10 milliliter, so the density equals 50 divided by 10 equals 5 gram over milliliter. Okay, so what is density? Density, the mass over volume, or the mass of an object in a certain volume. Okay, and density, the formula of density, D equals M over V. M means mass and V means volume. Mass divided by volume. So to find the density of an object, you have to divide mass over volume. Okay, now why some objects float and other objects sink? So, why some objects float and why other objects sink? Okay, example, if you have water here, if you put wood or foam, this it will float. If we put stone or nail, it will sink. Why some objects float and others sink? Okay, big piece of wood, okay, will float and a small nail will sink. So it's not, the answer it's not because of the mass of this, because of density, mass over volume. How? So objects float. Why? They float if their density less than the density of water. So if the density of this object less than the density of water, it will float. So they float because they are less dense than liquid. Any liquid, okay? Water, oil, juice. So why they float? Because the density of this object less than the density of this liquid. And they sink because the opposite here. They are denser than liquid. So, if the density less than the density of water, it will float. If the density more than the density of water, it will sink. So they float less dense. They sink denser than. Less dense the density of this object, less than the density of water, so they will float. So because of the density of wood less than the density of water, wood floats. The density of nail is greater than the density of water, so nail sinks. Okay? So floating and sinking are related to the density. Okay? Okay. Now the question. We said nail will sink. So iron, the density of iron, less greater than the density of water. So nail will sink. And big ship, and this ship or boat is made up of iron and it floats. Okay, so why this nail sinks? We said because it's denser than liquid, and this from iron also, and this less dense. So we can change the density. So we can change the density. So if we change the density, we can make objects that sink can float. How? We know density equals what? Density equals mass divided by volume. Mass divided by volume. Let's take the nail and let's take the boat. So the mass of the nail, for example, 100 gram, and the volume is, for example, 20. Okay? Now, density equals 100, the mass, then divided by volume. It equals 5. Okay? And the density of water is 1. Okay? The density of water equals 1. So, the density of the snail greater than the density of water, so it sinks. Okay, what about boat? For example, if the mass of this point or boat, sorry, for example, 50 kilogram, okay, but the volume is so big, okay, for example, 100, okay. Now the density equals mass divided by volume, so it equals 50 divided by 100 equals 0.5, and 0.5 less than 1, so the density of this boat less than the density of water, so it floats. So we can change the density. How? By changing the volume. If you made the volume greater, the density will be lower. So what is the relationship between volume and density? Volume increases, density decreases. If the volume decreases, density increases. Opposites. So if we increased the volume, the density will decrease, and the opposite is correct. Decrease then increase. So we can change the density of objects, okay, by changing the volume of this object. Okay, I hope it's all of these ideas are clear. Have a nice day and see you next video inshallah.